Can you understand this story? Stay until the end to test yourself.
Martin walked into his office on Monday morning and sat down at his desk. He was 45 years old and had worked at the same company for 20 years. The coffee machine made its familiar sound, and colleagues greeted each other in the hallway. Everything was exactly the same as it had been for the past 2 decades. Martin stared at his computer screen and felt a strange emptiness inside. His wife, Sarah, had noticed the change in his mood over the past few months. "You seem distant lately," she said one evening. Martin didn't know how to explain what he was feeling. He had a good job, a comfortable home, and a loving family. On paper, his life was perfect. But something was missing, and he couldn't identify what it was. One Saturday morning, Martin woke up early and couldn't fall back asleep. He walked downstairs and made himself a cup of tea. Through the kitchen window, he watched the sun rise over the neighbor's roof. "Is this all there is?" he thought to himself. The question had been haunting him for weeks. At work, his younger colleague Tom talked enthusiastically about a new project. Martin remembered when he used to feel that kind of passion. Now, presentations and meetings all blended together into one monotonous routine. He caught his reflection in the office window and barely recognized the tired man looking back at him. That evening, Sarah found him looking through old photo albums. "Remember when we went backpacking through Europe?" Martin asked, pointing at a picture. "We were so young and everything seemed possible." Sarah sat down beside him. "We can still do things like that," she said gently. The next week, Martin made an appointment with Dr. Peterson, his family doctor. "I'm not sick," he explained. "I just feel stuck." Dr. Peterson leaned back in his chair and smiled knowingly. "What you're experiencing is very common," he said. "Many people go through this around your age." Martin started going for runs in the evening after work. At first, he could barely run for 10 minutes without stopping. But gradually, his stamina improved. The physical exercise helped clear his mind. During these runs, he began to think about what he really wanted from life. His daughter Emma, who was studying at university, came home for the weekend. Over dinner, she talked about her plans to volunteer abroad. "I want to make a difference," she said with conviction. Martin envied her sense of purpose. When had he lost his own? Sarah suggested they see a marriage counselor together. "Not because we have problems," she clarified, "but because we could use some guidance." Martin agreed. In their first session, the counselor asked them about their dreams and goals. It had been years since they had talked about such things. Martin began reading books about personal development and life transitions. One author wrote that midlife isn't a crisis but an opportunity for growth. This perspective resonated with him. Perhaps this uncomfortable feeling was actually a signal that it was time for a change. At his 20-year work anniversary celebration, his boss praised his dedication and loyalty. Martin smiled and thanked everyone for the kind words, but inside, he wondered if staying in the same place for so long had been the right choice. Security and comfort had their value, but they had also made him complacent. One evening, Martin told Sarah about an idea he had been considering. "What if we sold the house and traveled for a year?" he asked nervously. Sarah didn't dismiss the idea immediately. Instead, she said, "Let's think about it seriously." This simple response gave Martin hope. They started having regular dream sessions where they discussed their wishes without judgment. Sarah confessed that she had been feeling similarly restless. "I've been working part-time for years," she said. "Maybe it's time I pursued my own career more seriously." Martin began volunteering at a local community center on weekends. He helped young people with their resumes and job applications. Sharing his experience and knowledge with others gave him a sense of meaning he hadn't felt in years. One young man told him, "You really made a difference for me." These simple words meant more than any performance review at work. He also reconnected with his old friend David, whom he hadn't seen in 10 years. They met for coffee, and David told him about his own life changes. "I left my corporate job 3 years ago and started my own business," David explained. "It was scary, but it was the best decision I ever made." Martin realized that the midlife crisis wasn't about buying a sports car or making reckless decisions. It was about reassessing priorities and having the courage to make meaningful changes.
Learn with LingoStories.app.